Hi, everybody. My name is Jamise. I'm an addict. I've got my orange and my basic text, and that's all I need. I'm just kidding. I didn't feel nervous about sharing here today until I got here and listened to some of the other people sharing, and they just seemed so humble and full of spirituality, and I just feel like, why am I here sharing? I didn't feel like I was the right person for the job, but the harsh reality is I've had a lot of experience with adversity and loss, and I think that I hadn't intended on talking about this, but my mom had a mental illness and was hospitalized for the most part of my 4th year in life. And so as a result of that, my abandonment fear is my primary fear. So when I lose something or someone that's really important to me, it feels really big. Fortunately, I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot of ways to cope by coming back, and I'm really grateful for that. And it's so good to see people here, such as Bo, that I've known since the first probably few months I got clean. Long-term recovery exists in Narcotics Anonymous, and we get a lot of tools here. So when I first got here, it was the early 80s. Narcotics Anonymous was rather small at that time, or in the city I got clean in. There weren't any women, for instance, that had any recovery. And for months, I think I was the only woman who attended meetings. So I had a male sponsor, and it worked. There was the therapeutic value of one addict helping another. And it was kind of funny because he had this really positive, excited attitude about everything. And I was feeling my feelings that first, few weeks especially. And I would call him up around the time he got off work every day and tell him all the things that had gone wrong. And he would listen patiently and then say, and it was, stuff like, I lost $5 at the laundromat and I had a flat tire, and everything seemed so huge to me then. And he would listen patiently and then say, so Jamise, sounds like a lot of things went wrong today. Let me ask you something. Did you use over any of this stuff? And I'm like, well, no, I didn't use over it, but it was terrible. And he said, well, if you didn't use over it, then fuck it, get on with your life. And I was, sort of dumbfounded initially, but I didn't have time to think about it, because then he would say, hey, look at the miracle that occurred in your life today. Could you imagine that you could get through all that stuff without using a few weeks ago? Now, I want you to go to your front porch and sit in meditation and pray and write a gratitude list. I'll see you at the meeting at 7:30. I didn't have time to say anything else, and initially I thought, that guy's crazy. I thought he can only say that because he's got a real job and he's got an affluent family and all that stuff, but he just had a positive attitude, and I learned to adapt that attitude. And I learned that no matter what was going on, I could always uncover some nugget of something positive. Maybe not right away, some things take longer than others, but I stayed clean for a couple of years, had a bad experience with a Narcotics Anonymous boyfriend, and I decided near the beginning of my relapse that I wasn't going to be involved with any more of those Narcotics Anonymous guys, that they were crazy, and I would probably find a normal guy the next time I got involved with somebody. And so like I could pick one, you know. So, you know, long story short, fast forward a few months, I actually married a regular, what appeared to be a regular guy. He worked 60 hours a week and had a good education, and I thought, okay, you know, this will be the end of the insanity. And what I didn't want to hear or see was that he was a workaholic. And I'd actually found somebody to emotionally abandon me, you know, because a few months into the relationship, I realized that I was more lonely than I'd ever been in my entire life. And here I was married. And I was like, oh my God, this is bad. But I told myself, well, you made the commitment, you took the vows, you need to try to stick this out. And so I relapsed during that time period. It was pretty tough stuff. And when I got clean again, we had moved to Baltimore, and I was going to this place where the bartender, well, almost nobody in Baltimore had met anybody from Alabama. So they were just really excited to have me there. and I hit a bottom really fast because I got these really stiff drinks, you know, and hardly paid for anything, anytime. The whole time during my relapse, it was completely crazy. But when I got back to Narcotics Anonymous, it was, you know, I prayed every day and said, God, if you don't want me to use again, just show me. And, you know, I had these 2 horrible episodes, and the next day went and I got on the phone with this guy, and he told me where some meetings were. I had actually met a musician who was in recovery, who was out playing one night, and he gave me his number and said, call me when you're ready to surrender. And I was like, okay. And so he told me where the meetings were close to my house. And I went to one, and I picked up a white key tag, and I raised my hand, you know, at the end of the meeting and said, you know, I'm new back after a relapse. I've been clean before. I know I need to make 90 meetings in 90 days. I know I need to be getting phone numbers of people who are in recovery and are using a sponsor to move through steps. And I know I need to stop using. So if you don't mind me calling you up to say good morning sometime, I'd like your phone number after the meeting. And I got phone numbers, and I used them, and I kept moving forward. And, you know, it was 7 years later, I had moved through all the steps, and I was struggling with some stuff, and Bo and I were on the phone one day, and I would call Bo up from time to time and tell him about what was going on, and I was so confused about how to handle it and stuff, and he shared 2 things with me that were really helpful. And one of the things that he shared with me, it made me mad at first because I wanted him to give me like a specific answer. And he'd say, I think you should seek God. And I was like, well, I've been seeking God, but I think he felt like I needed to try harder. And so then finally, I guess he thought I was ready. He told me about this book, and I went straight to the spiritual bookstore and got that particular book, and it changed my life. And you know, one of the things that I learned, you know, from the guy that had given me the meeting addresses, he was telling me to be careful about who I got involved with initially. And he said, you know, everybody's not there for recovery, and you want to go early and see who's setting up, and you want to stay late and help break down. He said, and you want to get those people's numbers because they're involved. You want to get the numbers of people who have a sponsor and who are working steps. He says, because if you don't, if you get involved with people who aren't serious about recovery, you're going to become the recipient of their unnecessary confusion. And you're not strong enough to handle that right now. And so he said, so be very careful who you get involved with. And I found out he was right. The other phrase that helped me a lot was he said, no, that was it. That was it. Sorry. I apologize. I didn't get enough sleep last night, so I may be a little different. But I started sitting in meditation, and it really helped a lot. And then when I was finally getting to this really good spiritual place, my husband, who I thought was just going to be a workaholic, which I could kind of live with, started drinking to deal with stress. And it wasn't very long. He had the genetic makeup before he was really off to the races and out really late. And I didn't think I was strong enough to live under those circumstances. I tried to move him toward recovery. I tried to moving into counseling. We went to counseling one time. And he didn't think he had a problem. He just said he was going through a lot of stress and needed the alcohol to relax his mind a little bit. And I was going, oh, this is not going to help, you know. But anyway, I wound up having to file for divorce, and a few months passed, and I found out my mother was sick, and it was not very long at all between the time I found out she had cancer and the time that she passed away. I think it was around a month. So, you know, thank God I went there and was by her side. And I didn't think that I would ever be able to really be happy again at Christmas time, because she died on Christmas Day. But you know, I had really developed an adult self by that time, where I was able to be there for her and show up with full energy, full adult energy. And my mom always liked Elvis, and I wanted her to know it was Christmas time, so I borrowed a friend's little stereo. I went and bought a couple of Elvis Christmas CDs, and I went in on Christmas Day, and I closed the door, and I put the music on, and I started, you know, singing along with Elvis. I figured this may be the last Christmas she has, even though I've been praying for a miracle. It wasn't looking good, and she couldn't talk at that point. And so this nurse comes to the door and says, why is the door closed? I just wanted to find out what's going on here. And I said, well, I didn't want to disturb the other patients. And she said, oh, okay. And she came back 5 minutes later and said, could you do me a favor and let me open this door, and will you turn the music up as loud as possible and sing as loud as you can so the other patients can hear you? So we did that for 2 hours. And then the pastor from her church came by, and we basically said a prayer together. And, you know, and I told her, it's okay if you go, Mom, I'll see you on the other side. And I went to have lunch with my dad, got a phone call, and she passed away before I got back to the hospital. And I didn't think I would ever be able to be happy again, you know, at the holiday time period, because of how close I was to her and what a huge gap I thought it was going to be in my life. And, you know, I had a little trouble, you know, dealing with that for sure. And in the end, the only good I could find out of the deal was when I thought about all the stories I've heard in recovery of people who honestly didn't have very good parents, didn't have the stability I had. And despite the fact that my mother had a mental illness when she was healthy, she was a really good mom. She was super good. So I basically moved into gratitude that I had had her at all, you know, because I think that's one of the most important things we can have, you know. So I think that, the stuff we learned that first 90 days, what I was told anyway, was to make a meeting every day, to use the phone, to pray, and use the literature. Those basics work no matter how long you're clean. When that stuff was going on, moving through the divorce and moving through my mom passing in a 6-month time period, I basically said, I need to be like a newcomer again. I need to be in a meeting at least once a day. And there were days when I was there three times. Luckily, I was in Baltimore. There was a lot of support, a lot of meetings, and I'd established relationships with people that cared about me. And I basically treated myself like a newcomer, got up every morning, read literature. Sometimes I prayed 3 and 4 times a day. I felt forsaken by God. It took me a while to grasp that God wasn't out to get me. My mother's body was pretty much worn out and she needed to move on. I was able to move through that stuff. Not saying it wasn't painful, not saying that I didn't cry 1,000 tears, probably 10,000. It was a lot. But I walked through it, and I know I'm going to meetings sometimes and sit in the back, and I might try to share a little bit. Sometimes I would just cry. I think I felt a little embarrassed about it sometimes, but this one member walked me in my car one day, and I was telling him how embarrassed I felt that I could hardly share without crying. And that I sometimes just thought, am I going to cry like this for the rest of my life? It felt kind of rough. And he said, Jamise, you don't know how many people you're helping, because you're sharing the pain you're in and you're walking through it without using. And there are newcomers in here that need to hear that we can experience loss and we can experience pain. And if we keep coming back and share about what's going on, we can walk through it, And he said, that is a good thing that you're doing, and you're helping people. And I couldn't imagine how it could be. I guess I felt I should be stronger or something like that. But, it was what it was. And, I think that it's one of the things about our human condition is we really want to hold on to things very often, past the time of their usefulness even. And we want things to be permanent, I still, I'll look back in my life and think, well, yeah, everything was great when I was 4. There were no big problems, but, we move through life and time, and we get older and things change. And, everything is temporary here. Everything. This building, me, you, this planet. But we're always looking for things to be permanent. And that's not the way life is. Some of us are very fortunate. We have friends of many years, like Bo, like Kermit. There's a number of people in this room that I've known for a while. And I feel really blessed to have had that continuity, and to have learned things from people who've been clean longer than I have. I know that one of the things that that I did to try to move through my sadness around my mom passing is I started doing things for other people that were mothers, because I think what moms do is just so amazing. So at Mother's Day, I would put together, a gift basket for a few years for somebody who I thought was a good mom, because I thought, wow, it seems like what moms do, it's so selfless most of the time, and they do so much. I mean, if we had to pay them, it would be a huge salary for what they do to get this person up and running into the world, And I guess I felt like it was better for me to try to do some selfless service and try to move out of my sadness eventually. I can't say I never feel sad again. It seems so odd, you know, not having a mom. I was pretty young when that happened. I was 34 actually, and they had me late in life, so I didn't really get to experience, you know, my parents seeing me, you know, grow very old. And you know, I guess that moving into a more spiritual mode, I really got in touch with the fact that God alone is real, you know, and that I had to seek God. I really had to seek God during all that adversity more than anything else, you know, to move through it. And, you know, that's not to say that, you know, I don't struggle sometimes. You know, I'm human and I'm an addict, so I'm not going to be perfect. You know, very often around the time of my anniversary, it seems like some weird money temptation comes in almost every time. I have found more people's ATM cards sitting on top of the machine, and the most recent one was kind of funny. I'm at I'm in the line to do something, and I pulled the tube out, and there's this woman's driver's license, and she looks just like me. I swear to God. And I was like, oh my God. You know, when I looked at it, I was like, I wonder how much money she has in her account. And, you know, so then, of course, my reality sets in, and I ask myself, well, how would you like it if somebody drained all the money out of your account? And I thought, you know, I really wouldn't like that very much. And, you know, the other thing I'll ask myself when I think about doing the wrong thing is, well, how would that look on the 5 o'clock news? You know, so it's easier to say, hey, I need to like check myself here and do the next right thing. So I put the driver's license in a tube, called the teller, told her what was going on, and she's like, thank you so much. She's a member here and we'll get it to her. And you know, this has literally happened to me, I think, 5 times. You know, but not with the picture ID, but with people leaving their ATM cards and their, you know, credit cards and stuff on top of the ATM machine. But you know, I think that learning what selfless service was and trying to do things without a thought of a reward, such as, you know, what's the kind of thought I had when I was, you know, first here would have always been, what am I getting? What am I getting? You know, how much am I going to earn? I was always thinking about what I was getting, not what I was giving. And when I got into the mode of trying to understand selfless service, I was able to say, what am I giving? What am I giving here? And that really helped a lot, because I went through this period where I hardly ever asked for anything because I didn't have to. I would literally think, you know, I wouldn't mind going to the beach. Spring is very close and we should think about going to the beach. And this literally happened. And I got in the shower, got out of the shower, saw we missed a phone call, picked up the phone and dialed the person back, and they said, yeah, we need Kermit, my significant other, in Hawaii for this March thing. And I'm like, we can be there. we can be there for that, you know. And that kind of thing happened where I would think of something that I wouldn't mind doing or having, and it just seemed to be there. And oh, that was so crazy. I had this one sponsee who was so cute. She was here from another country, and I found myself, try to go shopping to buy something for myself. And then I was like, well, why am I buying something? I have everything I need. I should buy something for Pinar. And I didn't know why it was happening. And then one morning I asked her, she was living in New York, and I asked her, I said, so how's the prayer and meditation going? How are you doing your step? And she said, well, you know, Jamise, we've talked about this. I'm agnostic. And when I walk to work, I pray to you and tell you what I need. And I was going, wow, that's some pretty interesting praying, but would you please stop doing that? And at one point, Kermit, we were on a vacation. I was like, we have to buy this for Pinar. Kermit was so funny. He looked at me and said, okay, but this is the last thing we're buying for Pinar. But that was a good one. And I thought, wow, I wonder what she could do if, you know, she prayed to somebody who had some power. You know? It could have been pretty impressive. But so how are we doing on time? 15? Okay. So yeah, I think that one of the things that happened as a result of the losses I had, which, you know, of course, was emotional stuff, and then we moved from Alabama to Virginia around 12 years ago, and there was a series of difficult physical events where I was in a car wreck. I fell a number of times. I hurt my knee, and it seemed like if you're trying to get my body back to health, I sort of stopped having goals for a while. I basically was focusing on survival. I'd had so many things go wrong, actually, that I entered this massage school because I had learned that massage helped me feel better, you know, during the time period when my dad wasn't well and we had to take care of him. My stress level went really high because what happened was my dad had been a military guy, you know, career man, and he calls me one day and said, Jamise, I need you to come over to my house as soon as possible. I need your help. And as I was driving over there, I realized my dad has never asked me for help for anything in my entire life. I wonder what's going on. So I got over there, and his hands were shaking, and he was trembling and nervous. And he said, I can't hold my hand, my hand's still enough to write my checks. I need you to write my checks out to help me pay my bills. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so I, you know, I did that. And he said, I think we need to go to the bank and put your name on my accounts because I'm going to probably need your help more. And I was like, okay. And so, you know, we did that. And I was like super grateful that I was in recovery, because that could have been such a huge disaster had I not been in recovery. And I turned off thoughts about myself, and I took really great care of my dad toward the end of his life. And I never regretted it for a minute, because he had worked hard all his life. He'd been brought up during the Depression and had saved probably a nickel out of every dime he earned. And he deserved to be cared for, you know, and it wasn't about me. And I couldn't have done that in early recovery even. But, you know, luckily I had a few 24 hours by then and was able to be involved in selfless service again. So the first couple of weeks I was really struggling, because I had to like immediately take over everything, driving him anywhere he needed to go, grocery decisions and shopping, doctor's appointments. I got him out of the VA loop and got him in with a regular physician. And I took great care of him, and that was what needed to happen. But meanwhile, I was sort of having a hard time because of all the demands, you know. And so I decided to get a massage, and I felt better and learned a bit about all that stuff. And fast forward, we're living in Virginia a few years later, and I had decided I would study, you know, and so I'm taking this class. And the teacher was talking about stress and how it affects us, and she had us take this test, and the score that I had was the highest in the room, and my score was, most people had already committed suicide by the time they got up in the neighborhood of my score. But not only was I not thinking about suicide, because I kept coming back, and because I had, you know, 12 steps that I had worked and was currently working and had a spiritual life, I was actually taking the class and doing well. And, you know, behind that, I fell in the parking lot and hurt myself and had to withdraw from school. But reality is I can go back, you know. And what I did was I sort of had so many things go wrong with my body, it seemed, and some of it was probably a result of not paying attention, you know, to where I was walking or whatever, that I gave up on goals. And so now I'm taking a look at that and saying, hey, you know, you need to get back into what can you do to make the world better, and probably I need to go to school some more and pursue some dreams I have. And I think that what we get to do here is such an amazing thing, you know. I mean, I've seen people come into the rooms that I didn't think they would ever stay clean. I mean, I would hear what had happened to them, and I would think, this poor person's life is like a blueprint for failure. And we just don't know. I mean, the healing power that's available through the steps and through staying clean and getting in touch with our higher power, it's so amazing that people that I never thought would make it 6 months, you know, get years and move on to live their dreams. And, you know, recovery from addiction is a relatively new idea. It is. Until you know, I mean, the first part of the last century, most people who used like we used were dead by the time they were 30, 40, 50 years old. And society didn't allow us to make our lives over. But today we can do that. You know, we can come into these rooms and we can share about our loss, and we can share about our adversity, and other people can hear that maybe their stuff isn't so bad, that maybe if they keep coming back and keep putting one foot in front of the other and don't use, that maybe they can move on and have a great life too. And, you know, it seems as though the things that we tell ourselves about what's going on in our lives actually seems to be more important than what's actually happening. You know, if I tell myself that my current, you know, drama is horrible, terrible, I'm permafucked, you know, and I'm never going to be happy again, I'm going to be pretty unhappy. You know, I'm going to be pretty unhappy as long as I entertain those ideas. But if I tell myself that the pain that I'm experiencing is temporary, that the difficulties that I'm experiencing are temporary, and look for a positive solution and look for a way to move through it, you know, I'm going to probably be okay. You know, my thinking, you know, I still struggle with it some, you know, I still struggle with it some. And I've had to learn that what I put inside of myself, whether it's what I'm reading, what I'm watching on TV, the thoughts I'm entertaining, you know, I can absorb negative energy. I have to be careful. You know, I remember as a newcomer, I would watch Scarface and be mad for a week, you know. You know. You know, so I have to be careful what I do still. And you know, I mean, if I eat sugary stuff, I'm usually cranky a few hours later, you know? I mean, I have to try to substitute healthy things like fruit. And so anyway, I guess I'm pretty much down to 5. Trying to think if there's anything else important. But I guess that gratitude, I think, is one of the best tools that I have, because no matter what's going on in my life, if I look around, if I do what that first sponsor told me and make a gratitude list, I don't think that I've ever had any single event that has been so terrible that I couldn't write a gratitude list or even do a mental gratitude list while I was driving and not feel better within around, 60 seconds. It doesn't take very long for me to realize I'm blessed, I've never been hungry for longer than a few hours. I have shelter, I have clothing, I have people who care about me, I have people who love me, and so many people around me, I saw them crash and burn. And I basically got here as a result of prayer. I know my mother and father were praying for me, but the other thing that was going on was I had a girlfriend who hit her bottom and was checked into rehab by her family. And when she got to the place where she could have a visitor, her little brother and I went to see her. And her name was Michaelin. And Michaelin was further along in her addiction than I was. And we visited with she and her mother. And I went twice, actually. And then at the end of her treatment, when she got out, I called her once a week for a month before she would see me. What she would say every time was, Mother's keeping me really busy, and I'm going to a lot of those meetings, Jamise, and I'm not using. And I'll see you again, but I can't see you right now. And so after the 4th phone call, her mother, Martha, said, Michaelin, Jamise is your only friend that came to see you while you're in the hospital. And she's also the only friend that you have that has kept calling back after you've told her that you're not using anymore, you're going to meetings. I think it's time you invite Jamise to a meeting. And I'm so grateful for the wisdom of her mom, because I didn't know where to turn at that point in my active addiction. I was being followed everywhere I went. I was feeling desperate. I was feeling confused. I was having trouble getting high. And I started praying, after an incident that had really gotten to my heart. And I started praying because I could see that the next thing for me was going to be stuff that I was going to be uncomfortable with, very uncomfortable with. And so I started praying for a lifestyle change, because I didn't think I was an addict. I was still comparing myself to the people around me who were 10 years older than me. I wasn't even thinking about it until one day I thought, hey, maybe they're farther along in their addiction and you may be like them in 10 years. And after praying for 2 months is when I got invited to that meeting. And almost everybody around me got arrested, went to jail. I had people that I called up for advice who said, well, people that do what we're doing, they eventually go to jail, And I really couldn't imagine that. And one of my friends had looked at me as he was about to walk out the door, and he said, Jamise, he said, the worst part about this is I've met your mom and dad, and I bet they'll spend every dime they've got trying to keep you out of prison, won't they? And I was like, wow. And, my heart just said, you know, I have to have a lifestyle change. And one of the guys that said almost the exact same thing, he didn't take his own advice, and he was crossing over the border from Mexico into Texas and got arrested, and he's spending life in prison in Texas. Michaelin never stopped smoking, and her family had to bury her a few years ago from result of not smoking or not quitting smoking. And you know, so I'm grateful, and sometimes I feel almost even like, why me? Why did I get to live and have a good life, and so many people around me didn't, and destroyed theirs? And I'm not wise enough to know, but you know, I have to accept it as a gift. I have to accept it as a blessing, and I have to do something positive with it, so it wasn't all for naught, you know. So I'm going to keep coming back. Thanks for letting me share.